I have always said a mother's eyes are both a blessing and a curse. They allow you to see your children's joy before they even speak it, and their pain even when they pretend to laugh. But they also force you to witness the slow breaking of what you once held together with your hands. The day my husband, Chief Nana, died, I felt a curtain close on my life. He had been my shield against the world for 35 years. Even when he barked at me in that gruff voice of his, I knew it came from a place of certainty that he would provide, that he would stand between me and life's harsh winds. But when he slumped that morning, teacup crashing to the floor, the house instantly grew too wide, too empty. Our sons, Chike and Emeka, came running from opposite rooms. They lifted him, shook him, shouted his name, but his eyes had rolled back into silence. I can still hear Emeka's scream, roar like something had been ripped out of him. Chike held me, whispering, "Mama, be strong." But how does a woman become strong when her root is pulled out from the soil? The funeral came quickly, as death never gives room for proper breathing. Relations filled the compound, priests came with their holy words, and neighbours offered condolences in whispers. Yet I noticed how tongues wagged, not about the loss of my husband, but about what he left behind. Our house in Enugu, where we lived for decades. The vast ancestral farmland in the village, untouched but fertile. Even before the will was read, envy had begun to hover like vultures. When the lawyer finally unfolded those papers, I held my breath. To my first son, Chike, he read, "I leave the family house in Enugu." Chike's eyes glistened with both grief and humility. Then came the words that changed everything. To my second son, Emeka, "I leave the ancestral farmland in the village." Emeka's lips trembled, but not in gratitude. I knew that look. It was the same look he wore as a child when he felt cheated out of a toy. I wanted to gather both of them into my arms and remind them of their father's heart, of his constant warning that brothers must never become strangers. But in that moment, I saw the seed of division plant itself. Emeka muttered under his breath, "So Chike gets the city and I get bushland." His voice dripped with bitterness. That night, after all the mourners had gone, I sat alone in the sitting room. My husband's chair stood empty, mocking me with silence. My sons were in their rooms, grieving in different ways. I pressed my hands together and prayed, "God, let my children remain one. Don't let property scatter the blood I carried in my womb." But deep in my heart, I feared that prayer was already too late. It is a strange thing to watch two boys who once shared everything begin to measure themselves against each other. When they were little, Chike could not sleep without Emeka curled at his side, and Emeka never ate his food unless Chike tasted it first. They were more like twins than brothers, though I bore them 2 years apart. People used to say, "Mama Nana, God blessed you. These children will never be divided." I used to smile with pride. But after the will was read, I began to notice small changes, subtle at first, like cracks in a wall before the structure weakens. Chike moved through the house with a sense of responsibility, often telling me, "Mama, I will make sure the family name is honoured here." His voice carried assurance, but I could see how those words pricked Emeka like needles. Emeka, on the other hand, carried his farmland papers everywhere he went, as though afraid they would vanish if he set them down. He began to talk loudly about his plans, insisting he would turn the village land into a business empire. "Mama, you'll see, this bush will feed generations. Chike thinks only the city matters, but I will prove him wrong." His tone was more boastful than hopeful, and I feared it came from envy, not vision. One evening, I called them both to sit with me in the parlour. The harmattan wind rattled the windows, but inside I wanted warmth to cover us. "My sons," I began gently, "what your father left you was not meant to divide you. A house and farmland, city and village, they are both wealth if you guard them with unity." Chike nodded quickly, eager to show obedience. "Mama, I understand." But Emeka's jaw tightened. He leaned back, arms folded, and said nothing. His silence spoke louder than anger. The neighbours soon began to feed the fire. A man from the next street corner stopped me at the market and whispered, "Your younger son is not happy." "Oh, why didn't Chief just share the house equally? That would have been better." I forced a smile, but my heart sank. Gossip is like smoke. Once it rises, it stains everything it touches. At night, I heard them argue behind closed doors. At first, about little things, rent, repairs, food. But soon the arguments grew teeth. One night, a maker shouted so loudly that I rushed into the corridor. "So, I am the bush brother, Arby? You sit here and enjoy Papa's legacy while I carry sand and cutlass in the village." Chike, hurt but still calm, replied, "You always want shortcuts, Emeka. Papa gave you land because he trusted you with it. Don't throw it away." I stood in the darkness, unseen, clutching my wrapper to my chest. My husband's chair in the parlour seemed to echo his voice, warning them. A family divided cannot stand. I whispered into the night, more to myself than to them. If only death had waited. "Chief, you should have been here to hold them." I used to believe a mother's words could cool even the hottest anger, but my tongue has grown weak in my old age. These days, when I speak, my sons hear me but do not listen. They answer with silence or with pride, and I am left wondering if I failed them somewhere along the line. Emeka was the first to slip out of my hands. He no longer came home to rest in the city house. Most times he was in the village, chasing one scheme after another. Sometimes it was fish ponds, other times cashew plantations. He would return briefly, smelling of dust and diesel, and drop himself in the sitting room with grand tales of what he planned to build. But the shine in his eyes did not match the emptiness in his pockets. I knew what was happening even before I asked. Emeka had started selling parts of the farmland, little by little, to strangers with fat wallets. I heard it first from one of my cousins who lived in the village. She came to me, shaking her head. "Sister, are you aware your son has sold half the land? At this rate, nothing will remain for his children." I felt my knees weaken. When I confronted Emeka, he flared up. "Mama, must you always see me as careless? Do you think I don't know what I am doing? This land will open doors for me." He slammed his palm on the table, his voice trembling with both anger and desperation. I looked into his eyes and saw not confidence, but fear. Fear of being left behind by his brother. Chike, meanwhile, grew more distant, his calmness now mixed with judgment. When he heard about the sales, he stormed into the house one evening, his voice sharper than I had ever heard it. "Emeka, do you want to ruin everything? Papa trusted you with land, and you are throwing it to vultures." The quarrel burned hotter than before. They stood chest to chest, two grown men who once shared a bed as children, now glaring like strangers ready to strike. I rushed between them, tears in my eyes, pleading, "My sons, please don't let this house hear the sound of your fight. If your father were here..." But my words scattered like dry leaves in the wind. Emeka spat back. "Of course you will take his side. Chike is the golden son. I'm just the stubborn one, right?" He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows shook. That night, I sat alone in the parlour, staring at my husband's chair. I whispered to it as though it could answer me. "Chief, they are tearing each other apart. What did we do wrong? Did your will plant poison in their hearts?" The silence gave me no reply, only the sound of two brothers drifting further apart. There is a way sorrow announces itself before it arrives, like distant thunder rolling across the sky. That week, I felt uneasy in my bones, as if my spirit knew what my eyes had not yet seen. The quarrels between Cheke and Emeka had grown so sharp that even neighbours avoided greeting us. My heart, already weary, begged God each night to intervene before something irreparable happened. Then it came. Tragedy, uninvited and merciless. It was late afternoon when the news reached me. Emeka had taken a bulldozer to clear part of the farmland for a poultry project. He had insisted on supervising himself, barking orders to the labourers. In the midst of the noise, his 10-year-old son, my grandson Ifeanyi, had slipped into the sight. That boy was always curious, always trailing after his father with questions, carrying a stick like a little man. Nobody noticed when he wandered too close to the machine. By the time the driver saw him, it was too late. When the call came, my legs gave way. I remember gripping the arm of the chair, my breath catching like a ragged cloth in my throat. "No, not Ifeanyi," I kept whispering, as though denial could turn back the clock. At the hospital, the air was thick with grief. Emeka sat on the floor, his shirt torn, his face streaked with dust and tears. He was shaking violently, clutching the lifeless body of his son as if he could will him back. "Mama," he cried when he saw me, "I killed my own child. I wanted wealth and I killed my child." His voice was hoarse. broken, the kind of sound that scars a mother forever. Chike arrived not long after, his usual calmness shattered. For years he had worn the armor of the responsible elder brother, but in that moment he fell to his knees beside Emeka and pulled him into his arms. Both of them wept, not caring who watched. Their tears mingled, years of pride, anger, and envy dissolving in grief. I stood there, my chest burning, watching my sons in an embrace I had prayed for, but never imagined would come through such pain. The nurses looked on, silent, their faces heavy with pity. For the first time in years, I saw my boys as they once were, bound not by inheritance, but by blood, by loss, by the unspoken truth that no land, no house, no property was worth the life of a child. That night, I sat awake, the silence pressing on me like a heavy stone. My husband's voice echoed in my head. A family divided cannot stand. But I whispered back through my tears, Chief, our family is bleeding. Only God can hold us now. Grief has a way of softening even the hardest of hearts. After Ifani's burial, the compound was filled with mourners for days. Women sat in small groups, whispering and shaking their heads. Men spoke in hushed voices, sighing deeply. Children played quietly, their laughter subdued, as though even innocence had been silenced by death. I sat by the window most of the time, watching my sons from afar. Chike moved about, quiet but steady, ensuring guests were cared for, speaking to relatives who had travelled from far places. Emeka, on the other hand, was like a shadow of himself. His eyes were hollow, his shoulders slumped. Sometimes I would see him staring into space, lips moving in silent self-accusation. Once I heard him murmur, "If I had not been blinded by envy, Ifani would still be here." My heart broke anew each time. One evening, after the mourners had thinned, I called them both into the parlour. My husband's chair was still there, untouched since his passing. I asked them to sit facing each other. My voice trembled, but I spoke from the deepest part of my soul. My sons, what happened to Ifani must never be in vain. You both have allowed pride and envy to make enemies of brothers. Look where it has led, to a grave that should never have been dug. Chike lowered his head, tears running down his cheeks. Mama, I was too proud. Emeka came to me for help, but I turned him away. I thought I was being wise, but I see now that I was selfish. Emeka's sobs broke the silence. Mama, I let greed consume me. I wanted to prove I was not less than my brother. In the end, I destroyed myself and my son. He fell to his knees before me, but Chike quickly pulled him up and held him tightly. For the first time in years, my sons embraced without bitterness between them. In that moment, I felt a burden lift from my chest. My eyes filled with tears, not of sorrow, but of fragile hope. I laid my hands on their shoulders and prayed aloud, God, heal my children. Let them see that true inheritance is not house or land, but the bond of family. Let Ifani's death not be meaningless. From then, things did not suddenly become perfect, but there was a new humility in their dealings. Chike offered to support Emeka in rebuilding what remained of the farmland. Emeka, chastened by loss, accepted with quiet gratitude. Together, they agreed to manage both properties as one family, not two rivals. As I watched them, I whispered to my husband's empty chair, Chief, your boys are finally one again. It took blood and tears, but the family stands. And in that quiet parlour, though my heart was scarred, I finally felt peace.